When you think of the Blitz during World War II, your mind probably jumps straight to London, right? But tonight, we're looking at one of the most brutal, devastating chapters of that story, which happened down on the South Coast. We're talking about the Plymouth Blitz, a city completely under fire. Okay, just take a look at this. It's almost impossible to believe, but what you're seeing right now, that was the bustling heart of Plymouth. Streets, shops, people's homes, all of it just gone, wiped off the map. This is the devastating reality of what that city went through. So it just begs the question, right? How does a thriving port city, a place full of life, turn into this? Into a landscape of absolute ruin? Well, that's exactly what we're going to dive into. All right, so to really understand how this tragedy unfolded, first we've got to understand the why. What was it about Plymouth that made it such a crucial target? It's kind of ironic, but at the very start of the war, people in Plymouth actually felt pretty safe. I mean, they were far from the fighting on the continent, with the English Channel as a buffer. It felt distant. But that feeling of security, yeah, that was about to be completely shattered. And this is why. Plymouth wasn't just some random city. For centuries, it had been a massive naval base. It was absolutely key to Britain's entire sea defense, with dockyards that were essential to the war effort. But the real game changer, the moment everything shifted, was when France fell in June 1940. All of a sudden, Plymouth wasn't tucked away safely. Nope, it was right on the front line. And with that terrifying new reality, the war wasn't some distant headline anymore. It was here. It was real, a threat literally looming in the skies right above their heads. The whole ordeal started almost deceptively. The first sirens went off on June 30th, but nothing happened. A false alarm. You can imagine the sigh of relief. But just a week later, that changed. The first bombs actually fell. And from there, things escalated fast. A deadly daylight raid in September, and then by November, the attacks got heavier. They started targeting critical infrastructure, like the oil tanks, sparking these massive fires that just burned and burned for days. The warm-up was definitely over. And look, this wasn't just about military targets, not by a long shot. These early raids brought the war right to people's front doors. Ordinary residential streets, places where kids played, they were turned into scenes of just chaos and ruin. For everyone living in Plymouth, any doubt they might have had was gone. They knew. They were right in the middle of it all. But everything that happened in 1940, as bad as it was just the beginning. It was a prelude. Because 1941 was coming, and that year would unleash a level of destruction that would scar the city forever. This was the true inferno. There's this one quote that just captures the feeling perfectly. It says, "The heart of Plymouth was doomed to destruction." And that's really how it felt. There was this chilling sense that it was inevitable. The attacks were so intense, so focused, that it wasn't a question of if the city center would be destroyed, it was just a matter of when. Now have a look at this map. It really shows you the terrifying scale of what we're talking about. Every single one of those little dots is a bomb. This wasn't some scattered random attack. No, this was a concentrated, absolutely relentless campaign to just obliterate the city. I mean, look at the density around the naval base and the city center. It's staggering. The absolute worst of it really came in two main waves in the spring of 41. First, in March, there were 5 nights of terrifying attacks. We're talking hundreds of high-explosive bombs that turned the city center into what people called a fiery cauldron. And just when they thought it might be over, it wasn't. In April, they came back for more. 5 more nights of just sustained, devastating bombing. Over 700 tons of bombs dropped. The city's defenses, the firefighters, they were just completely and totally overwhelmed. And behind all the smoke and the rubble, the true cost, well, it was measured in people, in human lives. Just look at these numbers. In total, nearly 4,500 civilians, ordinary people, became casualties, and over 1,000 of them, men, women, and children, were killed. And for those who survived, life was just shattered. Think about this number for a second. 3,754. That's how many houses were completely destroyed. Can you imagine? Thousands of families left with absolutely nothing. Nothing but the clothes they were wearing. And this is what shows you nothing was sacred. This image, it's a destroyed children's ward at the city hospital. I mean, a hospital, a place people go to be safe, to be cared for. These places became targets.
It just goes to show you how truly indiscriminate this bombing campaign was.
And it was everywhere. No part of life was left untouched. You're seeing a local business, the Mill Bay Laundry, on one side, and a charitable home, the Royal Sailor's Rest, on the other. It didn't matter. The bombing wasn't just knocking down buildings. It was ripping the very fabric of the community to shreds.
But here's the thing. The story of the Plymouth Blitz isn't just about destruction. As incredible as it seems, it's also a story about resilience. So what happens next? What happens after the fires finally burn out and all that dust begins to settle? Well, in the immediate aftermath, the city was just unrecognizable. This was George Street, once a main artery, a bustling thoroughfare in Plymouth. Now, it looked like little more than a dirt track cutting through a mountain of rubble. The entire map of the city had been violently erased and rewritten.
And these two images, side by side, they just perfectly capture that transition from pure horror to hope. On one side, you have the firemen battling this uncontrollable inferno, total chaos. And on the other, you see the very next step, the monumental task of clearing it all away. Bulldozers literally pushing back the rubble, making way for a new beginning. And you know, right in the middle of all that devastation, a symbol emerged. Derry's clock. I mean, think about it. Surrounded by raging fires and collapsing buildings, it just survived. Somehow it remained standing, a defiant silhouette against a burning sky. It became this incredible icon of the city's unbreakable spirit, a symbol of their will to recover. So, the story of Plymouth really shows us that rebuilding a city is about so much more than just bricks and mortar, isn't it? It's about restoring a community, a sense of home, and a spirit that simply refused to be extinguished. And it leaves us with a really powerful question to think about. When all the physical buildings are gone, when a city is just reduced to rubble, what is it that's actually left? What's the glue that really holds a city together?